One of my favorite stories as a growing physician is this encounter I had in a village in Africa. We came across a small village, and I was with some friends that were Ugandan there, and they pulled me into a small hut and introduced me to a family, and that family had recently taken in a very young child who I thought was much younger than the child actually was, and it turns out this child was very malnourished, couldn't walk, was just obviously dehydrated and weak, and hair, just hair was brittle and falling out. I mean, just a very malnourished baby. And my training, Western training, would have said, take that baby, put him in the Land Cruiser, take him, back to town, back to the hospital. Let's do IVs and some, nutritional therapies and some supports. And in fact, I think that's what everyone was expecting. In fact, I was leaning towards doing that. And a friend of mine that lived there, Livingston, he had actually been trained as a community health medical officer by me, ironically. And so he said, hey, Dr. Hutton, what if we use some of these things that we have here locally and try to see if we can't take care of that baby? What would that look like? And so we, sat down and we thought, and he said, well, okay, well, let's think about what we have here. For a number of reasons, we thought maybe it's not best to set the precedent of the solution to this baby's medical problem lies by going, carried in a fancy car by a physician back to a hospital. If there's a way we can help this family, with what they already have, is that a good option? And the answer was yes. And certainly there are times to do the emergency thing. So we got some things that were available locally, a couple of nutrients, a couple of substances that we can mix together, and we made some nutrient paste, and we got this baby some things they could take orally, and we did some basic training and educating the folks that lived in that village and in that hut. And we kind of got them started, and we were a little bit nervous because, again, it's not something that we had done a lot of, but we did it and then kind of left them to it, and they felt comfortable. But we did come back and check on that child. And one of the amazing things, but it shouldn't have been surprising when we came back, we actually came to that very hut, and we didn't see that child. We saw some other kids running around outside, kicking a soccer ball and doing all these other things, and I was a little nervous, and I asked Livingston, I said, where's that baby that we were taking care of? And he turned and pointed to a little kid playing soccer and said, that's the little baby that we took care of. And this baby that, I thought was young was actually much older, but once that child had just gotten some basic nutrients and basic things from nearby, had just flourished. And, I'm happy with how that turned out for a number of reasons, but one is now that family in that village feels very equipped to meet many of their own medical needs and not depend on, so many outside resources. And I've actually thought about that with ourselves here. If we feel like, prescription antibiotics that come to us from, who knows where in the world, or all of these things that we're supplied with to answer our health problems come from somewhere else, or somewhere, so far away that might be reliable, or our supply chains, might be non-reliable, our supply chains might get cut off, or we might not have access to these things, then we'll feel helpless and vulnerable. So anytime we can use what we have locally to solve these problems and create small local communities of interdependence where we can fix a lot of our health needs that way, that feels to me, based on my experience also in the past, like a better position to be in.